صفة الغسل الواجب. A description of the obligatory ghusl. مسألة غسل الجنابة. First thing الجنابة غسل. مسألة أما غسل الجنابة فيختار دون أن يجب ذلك فرضا. So regarding the ghusl of janaba, so we choose without making it obligatory أن يبدأ بغسل فرجه, that he start, يعني means this is a sunnah to do this, to start يبدأ بغسل فرجه, to start by washing his private part, his male member, إن كان من جماع, if he wants to do ghusl because of sexual intercourse. وأن يمسح بيده الجدار أو في الأرض. Then afterwards, after he washed his male member, to wipe his hand in the wall or in the floor. بعد غسله, after finishing his washing his male member. ثم يمضمض ويستنشق ويستنثر ثلاثا. Then he rinses his mouth by moving the water in it and inhale the water and uh, exhaling the water from his nose 3 times. ثم يغمس يده في الإناء بعد أن يغسلها 3. Then he how do you call it? يغمس يده, he sink or
yeah, you could say submerge or plunge.
Submerge his hand in the vessel, but after he washes it 3 times, فرضا, obligatory, ولا بد. إن قام من نوم, if he wake up from his sleeping. وإلا فلا, otherwise no. Then فيخلل أصول شعره, then he penetrates his roots, the roots of his hair by his hand. حتى, يعني he means with the water, he penetrates the roots of his hair with the water. حتى يوقن أنه قد بل الجلد, until he became sure that he wet all of his skin, يعني his head skin. ثم يفيض الماء على رأسه 3 بيده. Then he
The skin on the head is called scalp.
Yeah. Scalp. No.
Scalp, yeah.
Scalp. Okay. Until he became sure that he wet his scalp. ثم يفيض الماء على رأسه 3. Then he poured the water on his head 3 times بيده, by his hands. وأن يبدأ بميامنه. Then he starts with his right limbs or right parts. This is, all of this is sunnah. Okay? طيب. وأما الفرض, but regarding the obligatory ghusl الذي لا بد منه, which is must, فأن يغسل يديه 3. So to wash his hand 3 قبل أن يدخلها في الماء, before he submerge it in the water. إن كان قام من نوم وإلا فلا, if he wakes up from sleeping, otherwise he don't has he otherwise no, يعني he and can leave this. Okay. ويغسل فرجه إن كان من جماع, and he has to wash his male member if it is if he does ghusl because of sexual intercourse. ثم يفيض الماء على رأسه ثم جسد. Then he has to pour the water first on his head ثم جسد, then the body بعد رأسه, after his head. ولا بد, and he has to start with his head, then afterwards he has to wash the rest of the body. إفاضة يوقن أنه قد وصل الماء إلى بشرة رأسه. يعني he has to pour the water, this kind of pouring which he can be sure that the water reached to his skull وجميع شعر, and all of his hair وجميع جسدي, and all of his body. برهان ذلك, the proof of that the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said وإن كنتم جنبا فاتطهروا, if you are junub, so اتطهروا. طهروا يعني wash all of your body. فما أتى بالطهور فقد أدى ما افترض الله تعالى عليه. So however he does this tuhur, so now we are sure that he performed what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala imposed or obliged on him from ghusl. وعن عمران بن حسين قال كنا مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في سفر. This hadith is long hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari. Umran ibn Hussein said we were in the traveling with Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم فذكر الحديث, and he mentioned this long hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari. وفيه, in this long hadith, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أعطى الذي أصابته الجنابة. يعني in this hadith they lost the water. Okay, they had no water with them, just a little bit water, and they found afterwards a woman from Mushrik woman with the water, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam take her water, and this water started to gush and gush and gush. Okay, until all of the Sahabat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam yani drink and quenched their kettles, and after he finished, he filled the vessels of this woman and gave it back to her, and commanded Sahabat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to give her some food, and so they collected some food for her and give it to this woman, and she went and she became Muslim later afterwards. In this hadith, a man who was junub, okay, and he could not wash because there was no enough water with them. Then after this woman came, and they Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after they had a lot of water, he gives him. So this is the position here. أعطى الذي أصابته الجنابة, he gives the man who was junub إناء من ماء, a vessel of water, وقال اذهب فأفرغوا عليه. Go and pour this vessel on you. So on you means on all part of you. So Ibn Hazm wants by this hadith to show that is ghusl if you wash your whole body. So that is enough in ghusl. That is enough in ghusl. Okay. Why? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to this man, just اذهب فأفرغ عليه. Go and pour this vessel of water on you. So pouring the water on all of his parts, okay, this is enough. But other things to start with what he mentioned before, this is he said that it is sunnah, يعني it is مستحب, not obligatory. وإنما استحببنا ما ذكرنا, but we said that what we mentioned is like thing. Why? Because he mentioned this hadith عن ابن عباس عن ميمونة ميمونة زوجة النبي, wife of Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم, said أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم that Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم اغتسل من الجنابة, washed himself from janaba, فغسل فرجه, then he started by washing his male member بيده, by his hand, ثم دلك بها الحائط, then he wiped his hand in the bowl, ثم غسلها, then he washed his hand, ثم توضأ وضوءه للصلاة, then he did wudu. Okay. فلما فرغ من غسله, and after he finished washing all of his body, غسل رجليه, he washed his two legs. And the other hadith from Maymuna قالت أدنيت لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم غسله من الجنابة. I uh, give or I make the water close to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to wash himself because of janaba, sexual intercourse. فغسل كفيه مرتين أو ثلاثا, then he first washed his two palms or two hands 2 times or 3 times. ثم أدخل يده في الإناء, then he submerged his hand in the vessel. ثم أفرغ على فرجه وغسله بشماله, then he poured the water on his male member and washed it by his left hand. ثم ضرب بشماله الأرض فدلكها دلكا شديدا, then he struck uh, the land, the floor, or then he hit the floor by his left hand, فدلكها دلكا شديدا, and rubbed it or wiped it, severe wiping or severe rubbing. ثم توضأ وضوءه للصلاة, then he did his wudu the same as his wudu of salah. ثم أفرغ على رأسه 3 حفنات ملء كفه, then he poured on his head 3 حفنات. حفنة means if you take water just by your hand. This is, we call it hafna. So by one hand, okay? So this is hafna. So he took three hafanat, uh, ملء كفه, full of his palm, ثم غسل سائر جسده. Then he washed the rest of his body. ثم تنحى عن مقامه. Then uh, he leant away from his standing place. فغسل رجليه, and washed his two legs. ثم أتيته بالمنديل فرد. Then I brought a handkerchief to him, but he rejected it. He rejected it. وقد ذكرنا, يعني he did not يعني dry himself by a handkerchief. وقد ذكرنا قوله عليه السلام لأم سلمة, and we mentioned the saying of him for سلمة رضي الله عنها, إنما يكفيك أن تحثي على رأسك ثم تفيدين الماء عليك فإذا بك قد طهرت. It is enough for you أن تحثي على رأسك. حثى يحثو, حثى, to take the water with your two hands. Okay? Then another narration, إنما يكفيك أن تحثي على رأسك ثلاث حثيات. And to take the water by your two palms and pour it on your head. Just two palms, we call it hathwatun. So hafna, with your one hand, with your one palm, it is hafna. And hathwa means to take the water by your two palms when they are stick to each other. Okay, this is hathwa. So it is enough for you to أن تحثي على رأسك ثلاث حثات, to pour two حثوة, three حثوة. ثم تفيدين الماء عليك, then you pour the water on all of you. فإذا بك قد طهرت, then you will be pure. فله أن يقدم غسل فرجه وأعضاء وضوئه قبل رأسه فقط إن شاء. So now Ibn Hazm, why he said that it is obligatory to start with the head, then washing the whole body, because of this Hadith Salama. So تحثي على رأسك, to pour the water on your head first, ثم, then تفيض الماء عليك, then you pour the water on all of your body afterwards. Okay, so he said, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam started with this order and he commanded Salama to do this, so we have to start with the head in the ghusl. Then we have to wash the rest of our body. So uh, he has taken this hukum from this hadith. So, but there is one exception here. So he said, فله أن يقدم غسل فرجه وأعضاء وضوئه قبل رأسه فقط إن شاء. But if he want to wash his private part and his members of wudu before his head, he can do it insha if he wish. طيب. فإن انغمس في ماء جاري, and if he submerge in the running water. فعليه أن ينوي تقديم رأسه على جسده. So he has to has an intention to to wash his head first على جسده on, and after that he has an intention to wash the rest of his body. ولا يلزم ذلك في سائر الأغسال الواجبة. And this is not obligatory on him in the rest of the obligatory ghusl. يعني he just has to do this in ghusl al-janaba. Start with his head and then wash of all of his body. إذ لم يأتي بذلك نص إلا أن يصح أن هكذا علمه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في الحيض فنقف عنده وإلا فلا. Except if we have a text that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam teaches us to do like this. If we want to fil hayd, if a woman wants to do ghusl of hayd, of, because of her menstruation period. فنقف عنده وإلا فلا. So we have to stop in it or no. Okay. Right. Why he said that? Because in this hadith Salama radiallahu anha, she asked the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, فماذا أصنع في غسل الجنابة? And there is another narration. She what can I do in ghusl al-janaba? And in another narration, she asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with an extra question. She said, فماذا أصنع في غسل الحيض والجنابة? Okay, some scholars accepted this narration, and it is after I searched about it, I found it that it is authentic narration. Okay, that so now according to this Ibn Hazm, so she has to do this in ghusl al-hayd and in ghusl al-janaba as well, because she asked about the how can she do ghusl al-hayd and al-janaba. So now he said that because if this hadith is authentic in hayd, because he said ولم يأتي ذلك في الحيض من طريق إبراهيم بن المهاجر وهو ضعيف. This one narration from this one إبراهيم بن المهاجر and هو ضعيف, and it is a weak. The another narration which I'm talking about ورويناه من طريق عبد بن حميد عن عبد الرزاق. Okay, so this is the whole narrators of this narrators are trustworthy. But Ibn Hazm said وليس ذكر الحيض محفوظا عن عبد الرزاق. But the mentioning of hayd is not محفوظ. يعني this محفوظ, this is a terminology in مصطلح hadith. It means يعني the whole narrators or most of narrators narrated this hadith from Abd al-Razzaq, okay, without mentioning hayd in it. This hadith, this Salama. So we call this narration, which is all of the narrations are trustworthy. We mentioned this, we call it mahfuz. Okay, and just one narrator narrated this hadith from Abdul Razzaq by mentioning hayd and janaba, by mentioning two things, hayd and janaba. So we call this hadith, which is narrated from Abdul Razzaq, just one trustworthy one. He differed the most of the narrators in it, we called it shaz. We call it shaz. So mahfuz means most of narrators narrated this hadith with janaba, just janaba from Abdul Razzaq. And shaz, which means like odd, okay, odd, which just one narrator narrated it from Abdul Razzaq by mentioning hayd and janab. Okay, so this hadith, which is shared here, I mean, is a difference between the scholars of hadith about depending upon it. So some scholars said because this one who narrated this word hayd is a trustworthy one, so we have to accept it. So and she has to do this in hayd and janab. And some other scholars, hadith, said no, because this one added an extra word, but he differed most of the narrators. So now it shows that this one is not accurate in his narration. So we have to reject his narration and we consider this his narration as shaz, as an odd hadith. Okay, so we have to reject and depend upon mahfuz. Mahfuz, which is narrated by uh, most of narrators. So Ibn Hazm, as if he stopped this issue here now, so he said, فإن صح, and if it is correct in heights, قلنا به, we will say uh, according to it, ولم نستجز مخالفته, and we cannot allow differing discussion. Then حدثنا عبد الرحمن, and he said عن عائشة قالت كان يعني now we mentioned the evidence that we should start with our right limbs or our right parts of the body. قال عائشة قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يعجبه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم used to like التيمم. التيمم يعني start with the يمين, with the right parts, في تنعله, in his wearing his shoes, وترجله, and in his combing his hair, وطهوره, and in his doing wudu and ghusl, to start with his right parts, وفي شأنه كله, and in all of his matters, and in all of his matters. Okay.